Hello everyone and welcome to Cloud Robotics Working Group. Today we are doing a bit of an informal chat. We're going to be looking at all of our logging and observability research so far. I'm hoping that we can get to a point in the not too distant future where we're actually writing the guide and running it past people. For now, I thought it would be good to have a review of the sessions that we have done and talk about our learnings. So I asked the AI. I'm getting into it now as well. I resisted for longer than most people, I think, but for stuff like this, it's hard to beat, isn't it? So I just asked it to look over all the files in the Cloud Robotics Hub and give us a one phrase summary of what the session did. I thought that would be a good starting place for us to look through and just be like, oh yeah, we did that and we learned this thing from it. So that's it really. There's no format, no output that we need. It's just let's have a look through what we've done in the past and talk about it.
Before we get into that, I'm curious, have we heard back from our survey? Do you know number of responses, anything like that?
Good question. So when I was looking at announcing the session, there was one at the time. So let me check what the latest number is. I think you might agree that one isn't worth running a full session on. Let's have a look. There's the survey, and responses is still on 1.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
We might need to push on that and get some more responses.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, or there's a message that we're supposed to get and we're not getting it, but because I feel like we have. Okay, well, we can do that some other time. But thank you for sharing that for now. I'll think about it.
Yeah. All right, let's have a look. So maybe I should have divided it up into guest talks and discussions, because there's quite a few guest talks in here looking down the list. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Yeah. We put a lot of sessions into this. I've realized that I'm not actually sharing this to the call, which I should probably do as well, or none of the people watching the recording will be able to see. Open it in this tab, and there we go. Okay, there we go. So, that's another point. Ideas for Cloud Robotics guides. So that was from 5/19. Last week I said that I was going to look up what our next subject would be, and then I didn't do that, but the AI has given me where I need to go for it, so that's cool. Community guide priorities. In here. Yeah, so our top priority was logging and observability with 10 votes. Our joint second was simulation on the cloud / edge and CI/CD remote deployment. So presumably we can take our pick of those two and they'll be interesting to our audience. I imagine that this group has a bit more expertise with CI/CD remote deployment than with simulation. So maybe that should be our priority.
Yeah, I can't quite comment on that, but my sense is that we've obviously we want to close out this one first, right? The logging and observability before we start the next, and then maybe the sort of real exam for us is coming up now, right? Which consists in what's going to be the result of this, and this is that guide that you want to write, and I think that's, of course, exactly right. We need to somehow now summarize our findings and write some sort of guide, and then I feel like we need to take a look at that and see how valuable is that, and in particular, ask like which aspects of it are being appreciated by the community or not, and then that I think will have to dictate how we approach the next one, right? Like so for instance, right, if people are looking for very practical insights of, you know, what tool should I use or how should I implement this, then that in my mind would dictate what sort of input we need for the CI/CD discussion. But if we stay with CI/CD, right, like, or whichever one we pick, right, but it becomes an exercise of identifying the expertise required to produce the output desired, if that makes any sense. And I think, yeah, maybe that's what we need to do.
Yeah, so we can review that. We can ask people what they think of it. Yes, I do want to finish this up, produce something that collects everything together before we move on to the next topic. I would hope that we can put a guide on Cloud Robotics Hub, move on to the next topic, and then as we're starting to discuss the next topic, we can get review feedback on the previous guide and use that to shape the sessions going forward.
Can you share a little bit what sort of nature you think that guide will have? Like, what do we guide? What's our guidance? Like, in what sort of terms are we going to be speaking? Do you have a rough sense of what we can provide at this point?
So that is a tricky question, because the first question that I think we need to answer is, what do people want from this guide?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I did put a little bit of thought into this, and I think it's kind of guidance. It's, here are the things you should consider. So it's not, we recommend doing X, Y, Z. It is, here are the parts that constitute logging and observability. Here are some things to think about when you're doing each of those. And of course, this software can handle that. This software can handle that. Like, we have heard from the makers of this software, you can go and check out that meeting recording and seeing if it meets your workload. The idea being that someone who is new or experienced in logging and observability can go there and say, oh yeah, I've considered that, but not that. That's a really good point. Now I can involve that in my workflow, and there's already software that can do it even better. I don't think we're going to be designing software for people. I don't think we're going to be recommending anything in particular. It's purely, these are the things we've seen, these are the things we've heard about.
I think that's a good approach, basically structuring the problem a little bit, and like kind of breaking it down, and then for each part offering some pointers as to where to go next, right? Like, these are the things to consider, like within the whatever subcategory, right? Logging, metrics, visualization, recording, and then here are some tools in that category. That's good. I like that. Then, as you were speaking, I realized another question that we could ask ourselves, and that is, should this guide be a living document or a static one? Meaning that instead of a living doc, it could be a wiki page, pretty much, right? Like, or well, a page, a markdown page on the Cloud Robotics Hub that specifically suggests changes, right? Like, but I think wiki is the better description, right? So there's obviously wiki pages, for instance, right, for teleoperation, right? I go there sometimes and see what people have been saying. And the interesting point about living documents, of course, is that when the field changes rapidly, it can be a good idea to make it a living document so you can keep updating it. And it sort of engages the community a little bit. And in particular, the people that I think we could engage in it to a first degree, of course, are all of those guest speakers that we had that may want to use, that may want to choose their own phrasing when it comes to describing the problem that they solve and how they solve it. I don't know how you feel about that, but that just sort of popped into my mind as you were speaking.
I like that. I never thought about a wiki, but a wiki would suit it well. Of course, you need someone to watch what people write on the page, and that someone or some people would be us. So I think that would be a really good system.
It wouldn't have to be specifically a wiki in the sense of people can edit without us knowing. It could be the Docker Hub is already, I think it's open source, right? Like we made, yeah.
It
and
is.
then we could just, point out you can fork it or whatever, and then, create pull requests.
I think that's a
That
very
might-
good idea. The mechanism is there already; it's in place. Pull requests, and then it's also very good because we involve the main actors that gave the talks. So that will also make it a bit more authoritative and also more precise. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we've already got our tech recommended technologies or techs we like or something, and we invite people on there to submit pull requests. So this isn't, I guess it's not new to us. We can just reiterate, hey, this is for everyone. Feel free to contribute, and here's how to do it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I like that. So it sounds like categories is the way to go. So we can probably figure out what the categories are from the list. I think we've done plenty of sessions. It might even be that we get the skeleton of a guide and then decide we want a couple more sessions here and there, but we'll get to that. Thank you, Google Docs.
Didn't we? Maybe we should look at that preparation session that we did, because I feel like I have a vague recollection that we already did a breakdown at one point, and it must have been before we had all of those speakers. We may be able to repurpose that breakdown and now almost fill in the blanks, so to speak. Do you remember?
When I came to make the document for this session, I wrote a logging and observability discussion document. I discovered it in the drive, so this is already public and in the folder. So there's the link to that, and I can switch my tab share to that so we can have a look.
Oh yeah, that was not too long ago. That was sort of like a what do you call it? Like intermediate summary.
Yeah, did we do a blog post on this?
I don't think so.
I think there were some very interesting insights here. That you just scrolled past one. This one, the one about the fleet sizes and the different needs for observability that you have there. Yeah, there large fleets have multiple levels of support. I think these are also nice considerations that I think we shouldn't hide. We should actually make them prominent because it's actually. It's true. It's real. The observability changes depending on what you're on the maturity of your product and how many you have in the market.
Yeah, I was also, as I was skimming through, saw this table with columns as problems and rows are solutions, and put check marks if a solution meets it. It's a nice idea that we never acted on. So yeah, it's good we've captured this.
That might lend itself to a structure, yeah. Maybe we could use that.
Oh, we did do a post. I don't think we got any feedback on it.
I don't think I see it. I don't see it on our on the hub though.
I don't think it was a blog post. I think it was a ROS discourse post.
Ah, got it.
So let me. I'm just having a look if I can find that quickly. Are we answering your questions? Here it is. 100 views, 6 links, but no one said yes or no, this is the right direction, so we just kind of carried on.
I'm looking through the other things that we have in the drive to see whether I can find anything else structured. But I think that otherwise that table that or the description of the table would perhaps be the most useful structure, which I guess just says the outline. We still need the rows, meaning the problems.
All right, noted that down.
How would we go about listing the categories or problems? Do we have enough of a sense to actually start writing that? I mean, the obvious one is logging and observability, but that's not very insightful.
That's the overall. I'm tempted to try and download transcripts from all our videos and then get an LLM to go over that. That's what we would discuss for doing the ROS overview as well.
Yeah, we could try that.
I remember some dimensions. One was what we were talking about all the time, this sort of anomaly detection ahead, defining what is nominal behavior, what is non-nominal behavior, and then each one of the people that came to talk had their own take on this one, right? Many of them were recording like a minute and then throwing it away if nothing happened, and doing it like this. And then there's the part about whether they haven't, I'm jumping around. There's one aspect is whether they run an agent on the robot or what kind of agent it is on the robot or not. And all of them are using cloud, of course, that was quite obvious, but I don't remember many other dimensions. Well, I remember the one from Ubuntu, which was more of a data collection, pure data collection and visualization rather than analysis. So maybe one of the aspects is what kind of analysis you can run afterwards on the collected results. And I remember that very nice thing from Roboto that was basically able to infer or find out similar trajectories to something that happened. That was very exciting, but I wouldn't know how to call that column.
I guess that's not solving a specific problem so much as sorry, let me get my thoughts together. I guess the problem would be something like, how can you find related incidents, and then would say Roboto can do it, another one can do it, and then you would discuss Roboto's approach being really good in.
At a slightly higher level of generalization, I would describe it as indexing and search, right? Indexing and querying. And what you guys described is just a particularly good or appropriate way of indexing and querying. But in terms of categories, right? The question is, well, yeah, what do you record? How do you store it? And how do you index and query it? I think that's a very useful thing to have. And then we can point out that, Roboto's approach is a particular one. There's others. I think Insion also had something. And did we have Redux Store speak here? I forget. Or did I? I've certainly spoken with them separately, but they're also playing in that category. I guess we now have your great overview. So if it's not there, then it's not there.
No.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, well, I should totally invite them to speak here. Maybe I already did, but they haven't taken us up on it yet.
I think we had the creator of Redux Store attend the sessions, but I don't think he spoke about it.
That's possible.
So yeah, we could definitely extend that invitation.
And I guess we can also talk about visualization, maybe.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of speakers on that. But it's definitely a category for sure. The anomaly detection, this is taking shape. I think the anomaly detection would that fall under data?
I guess there's live anomaly detection, and then there's detection after the fact.
And data right now is the sort of the store, like the longer term recording and storage.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, that makes sense. The possible analysis definitely falls under recorded data. You can probably move that under that. Yeah, that's good. Well, the other dimension is what type of data. Then that applies both in live as well as in recorded. The big difference, of course, always being logs versus metrics versus in robotics case, real payloads like sensor data, right? Like point clouds, video, IMU, all of that. Yeah, sensor data captures that. What about versioning? One issue that I keep hearing when I work with companies is that they have issues with like schema versions. Oh, we recorded this data using version such and such of our software, and now we can't read it anymore. We need to transform it, or it doesn't fit, and so forth. So in terms of a guide, I would probably want to mention that it's a good idea, or at least something to look out for, like how do you version your schema or data.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I guess one thing that we can do with these categories is, now that we have a starting point, we can quickly look over the list that you have on top and see whether for each one we have a category that it would fit into. Because if we find one that doesn't fit, then we may have found a gap in our categories. So there's the guest speaker roboter. We already talked about that, right? So that's data recording and indexing and querying. Heeks was about selective uploading and defining triggers. So that, I think, gets captured by the how and when to upload, or what to upload. And also goes a little bit into the anomaly detection, because it sort of defines anomalies, lets the user define anomalies, really, and then, or possible anomalies. Then the bagel stuff is, we don't really have much of a category for AI, although you could argue that AI is just yet another tool that runs on recorded data. So that probably fits in there.
It's probably in the analytics, the bagel thing, no?
Yeah. Then there was a review, Rosberg MCP server research presentation. Yeah, very similar to, I think that those were your students, right, Giovanni?
Yeah, exactly.
And then AMP, operator
one thing to bear in mind is that the MCP server and Bagel can both operate on data recorded on a robot. I mean, there's no cloud necessary there. So we should make sure that in our analysis or whatever, we can talk about, I guess, recorded data doesn't necessarily mean in the cloud.
But I think it's worth pointing that out, right? Because again, this is all about scaffolding the problem, and I think you're absolutely right that people should think about, I mean, maybe this is too obvious, but they should think about what to store in the robot and on the cloud, what to upload, and where to run the analysis, and how to build the analysis such that it can run on the robot and in the cloud, or whichever one it is. Yeah, okay. No worries. Then what did Carter talk about again? I don't quite remember. Making alerts actionable, keeping metrics out of logs. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, the cost, the canonical observability stack. I think what I remember most about it was the suggestion to use, these canonical technologies like GG and so forth for deploying a specific stack, which was pre-configured, right? Like Grafana, Prometheus, Foxglove, and so forth. But it didn't per se try to add functionality. It sort of focused on connecting together things that already exist in the open source, which of course fits Canonical's mission very well.
That's true, although they did talk about how you could use their tool to deploy your own software. We just never did a tryout with that.
Right. So it would. I think we probably want to revisit that when we get to the deployment session, the whatever chapter where we learn where we study deployment and CI/CD. It just so happens that what they deployed fell into the observability categories, yeah. Then we tried it. Then we tried transitive and management. Yeah, I guess that's it. Well, so far we're passing the test. Our categories capture all of those.
I think so. I don't know if we have anything here about operator technical level, if that's the right category for it.
What does that mean? Operator technical level?
Probably not a good phrase for it if it's not clear. It's how technical the person using the tool is. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I mean that's definitely very important. I'm trying to remember whether we heard anything about that during our sessions. It's a, but I definitely think we should have it in it. I mean, that's really at scale. This is super important, right? Like this is like I may have mentioned it more than once at Savioc. This was sort of my job description, like to enable less and less technically trained people to use tools to help with the operations, right? And that's first of all non-engineers within the company. But then also customers themselves, right? Like if the more you enable the customer to self triage issues, the fewer calls you get on your call center, and then call center operators and potential partners. And that is actually what has driven so much development towards web-based tools rather than RQT and so forth.
I think we spoke about it with the Zion guys, with Sergi and Victor. They were mentioning they had different roles for the dashboards, for the diagnostics.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think maybe the other document that we've got where we had only had sessions on Roboto, Heeks, and Bagel, that's where we were talking about the pyramid. So we already had it in mind then. I think maybe it was Bagel because they're trying to make something that anyone can ask questions of. So natural language AI queries. And then also in our RosCon review, one of the videos, although it wasn't on cloud-based at all, it was a live server, a live web server that anyone could connect to. It was the Husky talk. I think it was Husky. That was also focused on making a tool that anyone could use. So it had a visualization on the page of ticks going across the screen because everything was okay and that kind of stuff.
Remember. Husky was the company?
Husky ClearPath Robotics.
Oh, okay. Well, Husky is one of the robots from ClearPath.
Yes, sorry, I get that mixed up because I always heard Husky and ClearPath together.
Yeah. Okay. And are you perhaps thinking of that cockpit thing?
Something. Yeah.
I think there was a RosCon talk last year where they just adopted, like, made an extension to an existing web dashboard, and I think it was called Cockpit.
That sounds right.
And Cockpit ROS2 diagnostics. This one, right? Is this the one that you were thinking of?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the speaker, I think I watched the talk and then gave a summary. But the speaker was talking about wanting an operator in the field, not necessarily an engineer, but let's say marketing that wants to get a video. Anyone should be able to set this server going and see what's wrong with the robot and maybe do something about it, depending on what the issue is. And that was kind of the target of that tool.
Yeah, I would put all of that under health monitoring. Sure, the technical levels is a dimension along which you want to make that health monitoring usable and actionable. But the thing, like sort of the problem that you're solving is, I think, best described as health monitoring, which kind of falls under life data. Maybe we could put it there. I would imagine that there was something in Zion about that. Obviously, we have our own tool, but that's just one example. And then we can mention that this cockpit tool as well. I think this is a good breakdown.
I think the later are more thought out. I'm wondering about having robot agent as its own category and anomaly
what
detection.
What were we trying to capture with that?
What you need to install on the robot for it to work. So
I see.
I think all of them used an agent in the end, right?
You somehow need to get the data off, yeah. So I guess we could have a category pipeline, right? Like what's the anatomy of a logging and observability stack? And then there's obviously the agent in the cloud and probably some web stuff, right? But within that stack, we can then also mention cause. That would fit fairly nicely because it sort of gives you a template or whatever, or like a pre-made stack that you can just deploy. Oh yeah, data transfer, good one. And then I would also add web as a fourth category in that stack. Or I guess web/UIs. You don't have to make it web. Obviously, nothing's forcing you to. It's just that when we're talking about cloud, that's kind of the obvious choice.
Access is interesting. I guess for organizations, you want to scope access sometimes.
Yeah, obviously. There's a lot of work in the later stages, but like when you're at sort of the hundreds of robots, a lot of work is on who should have access to what and how do you structure role-based access, time-based access, multi-tenancy, multi-personality per site right? Because there's so much of a hierarchy. Like a lot of deployed fleets have multiple customers. Each customer may have multiple sites. Each site may have multiple robots. And then that breakdown affects actually not so much access. It does affect access. It mostly affects configuration management, but access is definitely part of it. While we're rearranging things, I think possible analysis at this point has a better place under data recording.
I think we've already put it analysis here.
It's already moved below this analysis.
But needed cleaning up.
But talking about roles, now you made me think of something that that we didn't really see much happening, maybe because not so many roles were involved in the companies we spoke to. But what about traceability of actions and decisions that have been taken? Because it's part of the observability, right? And it's becoming more and more important with the fact that robots are getting next to people and causing damages, causing trouble. But we didn't see that with anybody, right? Nobody mentioned it.
Yeah, this black boxing, right? Some people call it that, or dash cam. It does come up a lot. And yeah, good point. This doesn't quite belong in the anatomy. I think this falls more into the category of what to record and what to upload and what to retain and for how long. Because like the common approach is of course a rolling buffer, something that always records and then retains it for however long you need to make sure you had a chance to see whether something broke, and then for liability you can recall that. So I would probably put it under recorded data. Traceability is something else, and that's what I thought you were trying to express first, which is in the context of access, sometimes people want to know who ran this mission, who configured the whatever maximum speed of this robot to be such and such. And also not even just from a blame perspective, but even just from for instance, we have this configuration management tool, right? And one of the things people asked us to do was to retain the history of configurations so that when you do an analysis of a raw stack a week after it happened, you can go back and check what configuration were we actually running at that time. Obviously, you can always try to record everything into the bag, but and that's actually not a bad approach for this specific case. But sometimes it's not about reviewing a bag, but something that a customer called you and whatever you don't have a bag, and you're still trying to piece it together. So traceability from an access point of view and change can be useful. It's sort of like, I'd say it's a third level kind of requirement. Most people who start out with logging observability, it will be a while until they get to that level, but it definitely comes up.
I think there is 2 traceabilities. I think there's the on-robot traceability, but you also need traceability of like who's changing cloud resources and changing configuration and so on that you wouldn't capture on the robot and store somewhere. So that's why I put it originally here, but I'm prepared to change my mind.
I just
on
don't
that.
see how it is a stack element. You know what I mean? Like a stack is typically kind of, how do I describe it? Like active entities that together provide a functionality. You know what I mean? Like there's an agent. It's actually a program, right? An agent is a program running on the robot. Traceability is, to me, more of a, what is that? A requirement on the stack, like something that the stack needs to support. That's why I'm just not sure whether I understand what you're saying, and I totally agree with it. I just don't know that it is part of the stack itself.
I'll take that point. It is data that is recorded, not a part of the stack that you would deploy somewhere or something.
Mm-hmm.
So Session asked, I was curious to ask what's the difference between traceability and observability. The answer,
I think traceability.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little confused. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, that was my question. Thanks.
Oh, okay. I think observability is a very broad term. Traceability is a specific type of observability. Yeah, I think traceability is specifically changes, whereas observability can be anything, right? Live, recorded, visual, whatever. Maybe actually traceability only makes sense in the context of a specific thing that you are tracing, like your configuration, changes to resources.
It came to mind before when we were talking about role-based access control, right? Because it came to mind as not even just changing configuration, but even triggering some actions, right? If you have if you have a stack even where you have the 95% autonomous and then you have 5% teleoperation, then
oh yeah, big time.
Then you need to know who drives.
Absolutely. Yeah. I still like what Giovanni mentioned earlier when we started talking about traceability as well, which is or maybe it was my misinterpretation of it, but one way or another, I think it's important, this black boxing thing of keeping track, and I think that falls under recorded. So maybe it's like a breakdown under how it's recorded. There is the retention question, and what triggers recording. You see that first bullet point under recorded data. That's the one that I'm thinking about right now. And Heeks falls under that, right? Like they were going with the manual approach where users define triggers, and then once that framework is set, obviously, they were also thinking about how AI could help in defining such triggers. And then the rolling buffer idea kind of falls into that as well.
And how about if I'm recording a roast bag of the topics, so will that be considered as observability data because I think it has all the information?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. That would
Okay.
be a way to record, and in fact, is probably the most common.
Okay. And what about then traceability? So, like, can you give some example maybe with a robot to understand?
I'm sorry, I missed that last question. Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, sorry. I was saying that maybe if you can give some example for the traceability, because for observability, I understand that it can be any data. For example, like rows to back recording could be one example. But for traceability, like I'm not able to imagine like how it should be.
I think I think the question is spot on, because the difference is very nuanced. And I think the answer that I would give is that traceability, at least in my mind, evokes recording of metadata as opposed to recording of data, if that makes any sense, right? Like ROSBECs, they are meant for recording robotics data. Where's the robot? What is it doing? What are the point? This is the point cloud. This is the video. That's sort of object level data that the robot operates on. But then there's sort of this metadata of what parameters was the laser scanner using when it was recording this ROSBEC, right? And I think that
Okay.
is what comes to my mind when I hear traceability for robot configurations.
So
Okay.
I might go with a specific example of something like you have configuration for your IMU frequency. Let's say you run it at 100 hertz normally. You
Yes.
could change it to 50 hertz, and that would be an object level change. And the traceability level changes who changed it to 50 hertz, why did they change it to 50 hertz.
Oh,
So you can trace what changes were made to your stack at the same time as seeing the differences.
okay. Okay. I see. Okay, I got it now. Yeah. Thanks.
That's great though. That is useful input. It helps guide what we need to write in the guide. Now I'm saying the word too much. We need to call it something else now. There was also your question about is ROSBAG a method of data recording? Yeah, that's caused me to split that into another subcategory. So thank you for that. Keep the questions coming.
Okay, thanks. So I think then traceability and logging are a little bit close to each other, because if someone has made a change and we log that info, then that is also kind of a traceability.
It is. Most people distinguish between logging and more structured data, just like we have that distinction between logging and metrics. And Carter was one of the ones who was very adamant about making sure that you do not mix them, even though, of course, you could, wash out that difference and just make it one. But he was very specific about the value of keeping them separate. And of course, it makes sense, right? Metrics are meant to be ingested by programs for things like visualization, indexing, aggregations, such as, what's the average and so forth. Whereas visualizing a log or computing the average of a log doesn't even parse, right? That doesn't make sense. And so throwing away that structure is not useful. And I think I would apply a similar distinction here with traceability. Yes, of course, you could just put it in the log as human readable and now LLM readable, log lines. But if you want to rely on it later, and almost like, when you're getting audited by some whoever, the Highway Safety Administration or whatever, and you have to show them this is what happened at 4:55 user such and such dispatched mission so and so with these parameters. You probably want to have something that is well defined. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, correct. Thanks.
So I'm just skimming through our list so far. I like it. I think we already have the skeleton. What I might do between this session and next session is create a branch with all the placeholder sections. I don't know if next session we would continue working on this together. We'll talk about that between sessions, but I'll try and make the skeleton ready for us based on all of this.
That'd be great. And are you thinking skeleton markdown like for the web page, or in what terms are you thinking of writing it? Yeah.
Yeah, markdown for the page, so it would actually render the Docusaurus pages.
Yep. Nice.
And they'd be very empty. Okay, I actually think this is in a good place and a good place to leave it. So, does anyone have any more changes they'd like to make?
I'm really happy about this. I have to say, I felt very empty-minded about this when we tried to write it down first, but it really came together nicely. And what I really like about this too is it nicely reflects the complexity of what we're talking about, right? And because one thing that I often decry about the robotics industry is that there's a lot of people acting based on a lack of knowledge what they don't know. They think, oh, well, we need something for logging and observability. I've heard people use Prometheus and Grafana for logging and observability. So let's just do that. And this guide, I think, nicely reflects how that is totally incomplete, right? Like there's so many more dimensions along which you even need to think about this before you can get to the tool point.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And then hopefully that's convincing enough that this is helpful to people, that it's worth us maintaining.
Yep.
All right, in that case, let's call it until next session. Thanks for your help bringing this together. See you then. I'm not sure what the session will be on, but we'll talk about that between sessions.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.